There are some things that are easier to say than to understand, like forever. I can't count the number of times I've said that word, but its meaning is far beyond the limits of my brain. Think back to when you learned basic geometry in school. You would have learned about 3 different but similar figures. There were lines and rays and line segments. And let's talk about those in reverse order. If you ask someone to draw a line on a piece of paper, chances are what you would get is a line segment. A line segment has a beginning and an end. Put your pencil here, pull it across to there, pick it up, voila, a line segment. And then you can take a ruler or a measuring tape to that line segment and determine that it's 5 inches long. But mathematicians aren't satisfied with line segments because, at least in the theoretical world that math lives in, some things might go on without ending. So you put your pencil on the piece of paper and start drawing and never stop. You just keep going infinitely out into space. And when you reach the edge of the universe, keep going. That's a ray. It's a figure that has a starting place, but no ending. So, how long is a ray? Well, it's infinite. It goes on forever. We talked about finite line segments and infinite rays. But what about lines? Well, that's even trickier than a ray because you can't start drawing a line. A line has no beginning. A line stretches infinitely in both directions. So how long is a line? Well, it's infinite. More infinite than a ray. I know what some of you are thinking. How can something be more infinite than something that's infinite? Well, there are places the line goes that the ray doesn't. But there's nowhere the ray goes that the line doesn't. If you're having a hard time wrapping your head around that, don't worry. This is the kind of thing that's easier to say than to understand. Because nothing in the natural world is infinite. God is eternal. He has no beginning and no end. He is the ultimate fact of existence. That's why when Moses asked God what to call him, God said, I am. He is, right? He just is. Before anything else was, before even time existed, God was. And stretching out endlessly into the future, he will be. And right now, in this moment, he is, just as he was, and exactly how he will be. Even though that's impossible for us to actually picture, I think that we can accept it without too much trouble because God is unlike anything else. Everything else in the universe has limitations, but God doesn't. Everything else in the universe changes, but God doesn't. Everything else in the universe eventually breaks down and eventually ceases to be, but God doesn't. What I think is a little bit harder for us to accept is that we are forever too. We are also eternal. After all, that's what we're saying when we speak the words of the Creed. I believe in the life everlasting. God is eternal like the line we discussed earlier, stretching infinitely into the past and stretching just as infinitely into the future. But you and I aren't like that. We actually have a beginning. We have a moment when we were created, which makes us like the ray. We aren't eternal in the same way God is, but we are eternal. We have a starting place, but our life in Christ stretches out endlessly into the future. That's hard to imagine, I think. And at a certain level, it might even be kind of a scary thought. After all, what sort of experiences do you usually describe as lasting forever? Defrosting the Thanksgiving turkey? Sitting in traffic on the freeway? Waiting in line at the DMV? Forever is a pretty unnatural thing in this world. And that's because of sin. Sin ruins everything. It's because of sin that we suffer. It's because of sin that everything breaks down over time. It's even because of sin that waiting is so painful. Because we know we only have a limited number of days on this earth, and it's a shame to waste a moment of it. Forever in a sin-filled world is a terrible thing. But forever without all of the pain, without the hardships, without the selfishness inherent in struggling to survive in a world of scarcity and danger, forever in a perfect world is something altogether different. That's why the resurrection we talked about last week is so important. That's why God will make all things new, because you were meant for eternity. But eternity, the way things are, would be a terrible curse. Things must be set right once and for all. Now, having set our eyes on the world to come, the interesting thing is that isn't another life. It's an unbroken continuation of the life that you live right now. This is precisely what Jesus said to Martha outside the tomb of Lazarus. I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. This body of yours will most likely die one day, but you'll keep on living. And not metaphorically, or like in people's hearts, or any of that nonsense. I mean, you will keep living. Your soul will not die. And in the resurrection, you'll be gifted with a body just as eternal as your soul. Which means that the life everlasting doesn't start when you die. It's already begun. They say you only live once, and that's true. But because of Jesus, that once is more than enough. That once is forever.